Hey, what is going on everyone, and welcome to another video tutorial. In today's video, we're going to create a countdown timer which will count down to a specific date, which we will choose. But this time, I'm not going to use vanilla JavaScript, I'm going to use React. I also did this project using only vanilla JavaScript, and I thought let's also try it using React. Now, in order to achieve the countdown timer, we're going to use a couple of hooks. We're going to use useEffect and useState, and I'm also going to use a couple of default props. Now, before we get into the video, if you're new to the channel, then please consider subscribe because I post content like this on a weekly basis. Also, if you liked my video, give it a thumbs up. And if you have any kind of questions or suggestions for further videos, please leave them in the comment section below. You can also follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm all over the place. Also, the entire code for this project will be posted in the link in the description below. So if you wish to only follow along and not code along, then please feel free to do so. Okay, so with this being said, let's get into the project. Okay, so I just created an empty folder. I called it countdown timer. So let's open up a terminal. Now, first things first, I'm using Visual Studio Code. I'm on a Mac. So if you wish to use something else, then please feel free to do so. But if you wish to follow along exactly with what I'm doing, then you need Visual Studio Code. Now I'm just going to open up a terminal, and I'm going to use the integrated terminal from Visual Studio Code. It's enough for me. I know some of you use other kind of terminals. There's no problem. Well, the end effect is actually what counts. So let's do a npx and create React app. And we're going to say dot. So it's going to be installed within this folder in our countdown timer. And I'm using npx, so it's going to be installed only locally. So let's hit enter. And I'm going to skip or fast forward over this part because this is going to take a while until React is installed. Okay, so now that we have everything installed, let's just type in npm start, and this will start on server on, let's see, on the port 3000, and there we go. There's our React app. Now let's also do a general cleanup here. So I'm not going to use the logo, the report, setup test, the index CSS, the app test. So I'm just going to delete all of them. This is going to break my application, but no problem. Let's see, we don't need you. So let's go into app.js and let's delete. So let's go into app.js and let's delete import logo because we deleted our logo. We don't need you anymore. We're also going to delete everything that we have in our header here in our function app. I'm just going to return here a clock or a time. Let's call it clock. Clock. Okay, now it's also going to index.js. This is also looking for index CSS. We don't have it anymore. We don't have our report anymore. And we don't need you. Okay. And there we go, this should work again. Also now app, yeah, I could leave everything as it is. And let's hit save. So let's close this one up. Let's close our index up. We don't need you. And let's go into our app.js. And where we have our clock, let's go down here. Let's actually make a component out of this. So I'm going to just place it between open and close and call this clock. Okay, now we need this component, so let's go into our source. Let's create a folder. Let's call this components. And within here, I'm going to create my clock component. So capital C and .js. And now I'm going to use RAFCE in order to create a React default export for this component. Is automatically going to have the name. So we're going to bring this into app.js. Let's go in here. Let's say import. I'm going to import our clock from // what are you doing? Visual Studio would like to access your network. Yes. // components. And from here, we're going to select our clock. And our clock should be, let's reload here. Should be in here. But there's nothing in our clock, so let's just type in here title of clock. And there we go, there's our clock. Now let's go back to app.js. And now right about our return, we're going to destructure 4 states. And those 4 states will be for the day, hour, minutes, and seconds. But I'm going to use useState. So let's bring in useState. Let's go to app.js, import app.css, yes. And I also want to import React from React. And within here from React, we're also going to import, actually let's import, now just going to import useState for now. useState, whoa, useState, there we go. And we're missing here a comma. Okay, state is not used, I know. Let's click here on a refresh. So we go to go above our return, and we're going to here create a const, then an array, and we're going to pass in the state, and the first state will be timer day. And we're also going to pass in the function, then it's going to set the state. So set timer days. This should also be days. Let me change the days. And we're going to use here useState. Now we're going to do the same thing for hours, minutes, and seconds. So I'm just going to replace this with hours, then minutes, and whoa, not you, just you there. So minutes, and the last one will be seconds. Now within our clock component, I'm going to pass this in using props. So I'm going to set the timer days equal to timer days, then the timer hours equal to timer hours, then timer minutes equal to timer minutes, and of course timer seconds equal to timer seconds. And now I can access it within our components. So let's go back in here and let's bring them in using the instructions. So timer days, actually I could just copy them in. So I need timer hours, then timer minutes, and timer seconds. Okay, so now instead of this clock, let's create and also import. useState has already been declared. Wait just a second. So useState, import useState. We don't need you. Okay, so this is working again. Where were we? So back in our clock, we're going to replace this clock with, well, the actual clock. So I'm going to actually create the JSX within here. Now instead of div, I'm going to use Fragment because I don't need this div. So I'm going to import React and also import Fragment from React. So let's type in here Fragment, and now I can use Fragment instead of this div. Okay, now within our fragment, I'm going to create a section which is going to just contain the timer. So I'm just going to call this section. And wait just a second, my emit is not set to React JS. Let's try this again, section, there we go. Section and dot for the class timer container. Okay, within our timer container, we're going to have our timer itself. So let's create another section. I'm going to give this the class name of timer. And now we can create our clock, which is just going to be in a div. So class clock. And now I'm going to create different sections for the days, minutes, the days, hours, minutes, and seconds, of course. So let's create a first section, which is going to contain in a paragraph tag the timer days, and underneath of this we're going to create a small tag and type in here days. So I'm just going to copy this 1, 2, 3, 4, so we need 4 of them, and this will be hours, then minutes, and then seconds. Okay, and in order to have some kind of values within here, let me go in here and create some default props. So I'm going to select our clock and say dot default props. I'm going to set this to timer days, which is going to be, let's just say 10. I'm going to copy this 4 more times, and this will be hours. And let me start from bottom up. So instead of days, we're going to have seconds, the minutes, and this will be hours. Okay, so if I hit save, we're going to have our default values from 10, 10, 10, and 10. I just want to have these default values within here in order to style it a bit, and then we're going to take care of this dynamically. And of course, I'm still missing something, and that's the separator between them. So after each section, we're going to create a span tag, and span, and this span tag is just going to have a semicolon, actually column. So let's go underneath our next section. This should also have the column, and the next one also. Wait, not here, but here. Okay. So we got our days, we got our hours, we got our minutes, and we got our seconds. Now let's style this a bit. So let's go ahead and open up app CSS. App header, I could actually leave everything as it is. And I'm also going to use a couple of colors from here. So let's start up by grabbing up to our app class. I'm going to set the height of it to 100 viewport heights. I'm going to span over the entire viewport height. I'm going to change the background of our app, so the background color to, let's go with the dark color. Oh, and I see we have a couple of margins. So let's go up here and let's do a general reset. So let's say star, let's say margin 0 and padding also 0. And this is going to take off all of the margins and all of the paddings. Now, because we already have that app up there, let me actually Control X, save, and go in here and paste it in. Boom. So the next thing we need is we're going to display everything as flex. Now I'm going to flex, change the flex direction to a column. And now I'm going to justify the content to the center. So I'm going to push everything down in the center and also align the items to the center, and just going to center everything in the center of the page. Okay, now let's grab onto the clock class, class of clock. And first of all, I need to position this relative. Now, after we did this, we're going to set the margins to auto, then display again everything as flex. So we're now displaying this content right here as flex, okay? Whatever is in the clock. Now again, I'm going to justify the content to the center. And this is going to push everything in the center of the x-axis. And now if I align the items to the center, it's going to align also the dots to the center, or the columns, I'm sorry. Now let's give this, first of all, a background color. So background color. Oh, now I'm going to actually use background because I'm going to use here a linear gradient. And within our linear gradient, we're going to use 2 hexadecimal colors. So I'm going to use a hash of 051817, and it's going to go from this to a hash of 0E3839. Okay, so we have this too. Now I'm going to change the direction. Let's first of all give it a height. Let's give it a height of 180 pixels and then a width of 350 pixels. Okay, now I'm going to change the direction of the linear gradient by typing here before our first color. I'm going to change it to 270 degrees. So DEG, comma, and there we go. Now it's going from the left to the right. Okay, now the text, so the color of the text within here, I'm going to set this color to a hash of 06F1F6. Okay, so it's a neon greenish color. I'm also going to give the text a bit of a shadow, so text shadow 1 pixel, 1 pixel, and a spread of 7 pixels. We're going to be glowing. Now I'm going to give our container, so our clock, a border radius of 15 pixels. Let's give it a border of 2 pixels solid and silver for the color. Okay, and now I'm going to give it a glow by using a box shadow of 0, 0, 5 pixels and 25 pixels for the spread, and it's going to have this glowing color now. Okay, now let's take care of our sections because they're pushed together. I want to change this. So let's go down here. So within our clock, we have our section tags, actually within our class of clock. So all of the section tags within the clock class, going to display them as flex. Change the flex direction to a column. And now I can use justify content and align items again on them. So let's justify the content center and align items center. And there we go. All we need to do now is give it a padding of 1 rem and they're spread equally. I could have also used justify content and space equal, but I want to have this equal padding of 1 rem. Okay, next up, let's take care of our paragraph tags because I want to increase the size of them. It's actually this tens. So let's go with our clock class. And within our clock class, we're going to select within the sections all the paragraph tags. And from here, we're going to change the font size to 4 rem. Okay, you can obviously just play a bit around with this if you wish to have it a bit larger or smaller. But now I'm going to also change the small text down here. So let me copy this, paste it down here, and instead of paragraphs, I'm going to use small. And we're going to change, first of all, the color to silver. And then the text shadow will be none. Okay, so that's much better. Or at least for me, it is. I'm still not satisfied with how this looks. Let's increase the width to 360. Okay, so that's basically for our styling. So now I can close this one up. And also the clock. Let's see, do we still need to do something in our clock component? No, we're also done with this one, so we can close this one up. Now let's give this a functionality. So first things first, I'm going to initiate here a interval. Okay, so I'm just going to use let, then initiate an interval, and now I'm going to create a const, a function with start. I'm going to call start timer. I'm going to assign this to an arrow function, and this function which will actually handle our time. Now, first things first, we need to create a countdown date. This just means we're going to set the date from which it's going to count down. So let's create here const, all this count down date. And we're going to set this to new date object. And within here, we're going to pass in our date. So let's pass in May 30. So actually, I'm going to pass in May 30. This is the last day of this month. And also the year, depending on when you're watching this, is 2021 right now. So I'm going to pass in 2021. So I need to pass in a future date. And we're also going to get from this the time using the get time method. It's a method, so open and close parentheses. Now that we have our countdown date, we can use our interval. And we're going to assign this to a set interval, and this takes in a callback function, which is going to get, first of all, the today's date. So we're going to call this now. I'm going to assign this to new date, so a new date object again, and from this we're going to get the time again because we're calculating time. So the time operator, get time operator. Now we need to calculate a distance. So we're basically calculating the distance from the future to now. So let's create another const. Let's call this distance. So as I said, we're going to subtract from count down date. We're going to subtract the now. Okay. Now all we need to do is assign here days, hours, minutes, and seconds. And we're going to do this by creating for each of them a variable. And this variable will be constantly updated using, well, not the set intervals function, but actually going to use another hook. We're going to use effect hook in order for this to constantly update each time the application loads. So let's start out by creating our days, our hours, our minutes, and our seconds. So for this, I'm going to use const. Let's call this days. And now, in order to calculate the days, we know that a day has 24 hours, and an hour has 60 minutes, and a minute has 60 seconds, and a second has 1000 milliseconds. Now, in order to get a number from this, we need to first of all pack it into a math and a .floor method. And as you can see, we're going to use the floor method because this is going to return an integer. So let's use our math floor, and now we're going to divide our distance that we just calculated up here. We're going to divide it with 1 day, and as we know, 1 day has 24 hours, an hour has 60 minutes, a minute has 60 seconds, and a second has 1000 milliseconds. Okay, so this is our day. Now we need to do the same thing for 1 hour in order to calculate an hour. So hour, we're going to use math floor again. We're going to get now a percentage, but this time we're going to divide this 1 day with 1 hour. So we're going to use, point close parentheses, 1000 seconds times 1000 milliseconds times 60 seconds times 60 minutes, which is going to result in 1 hour. Next up, let's take care of the minutes. So I'm going to copy this. Let's replace this minutes. And I'm just going to delete from this our 24 hours. And I'm also going to delete 60 minutes. And the last thing is going to be the seconds. So let's copy this, seconds, and we don't need minutes anymore, and we don't need you anymore. Okay, now we need to create a condition. So how long should this interval run? Well, this interval should run until if the distance is less than 0. And if the distance is less than 0, then we're going to stop, typing a comment, stop the timer. And we're going to stop the timer by creating a clear interval method, which is going to take in the interval dot current. Okay, now else, so if this is not true, the distance is not less than 0, then we're going to constantly update. So let's type in here, another comment, update the timer. And how can you update the timer? Well, we're going to use now our states by setting the day, setting the time, setting the minute, and setting the hour, which is actually going to update these values right here. And these values, as you know, if you take a look in our clock, are in here, and until now they have default values. Okay, so if you go back in our application and let's use our set day, which is going to take in days. I'm going to copy this a couple of times, and then we're going to use hours. It's going to take in hours, then minutes. We're going to set the minutes, which is going to take in the minutes, and we're going to use set seconds, which is going to take in the seconds. Okay, so we're almost done. All we need to do now is when the application is loaded to run this function. And we can do this by using another hook called useEffect, which is the same thing as component did mount. So let's bring in useEffect. We brought in useState. So let's bring in useEffect. Now we need to use our useEffect up here. So before our return, we're going to call on useEffect, and this takes in a callback function. which is just going to call upon our start timer. Okay, so as you can see, it's already running because all of these values were now replaced from the default values. Okay, so that's pretty much it. It's actually running. Okay, everyone, so this was the project. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, thumbs up. If you didn't, thumbs down. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Hit that notification bell in order to get notified whenever I post new videos. And thanks again for watching. Leave a comment, stay cool, be nice. Bye-bye.